I'm Rosie Hardy. This is Rosie Hardy Gardening. Today we're going to look at using some perennials with grasses so that you have a really effective looking border. The grasses I have chosen are ones that will go in semi-shade. Some will maybe take it a little bit drier, others will need a little bit of moisture. And all that means is that you are going to have to add a bit of garden compost when you put them in, or give a specific plant a little bit more of a mulch. So let's have a look at what we've got. Grasses, absolutely fabulous plants. You get a base of really lovely graminoid foliage here, and then you get the flower heads coming up. And in the autumn is often one of the best times that you can look at the grasses, because they have got their flower heads up, you've got the dew coming down, you've got the spider's webs all attaching themselves on the top. And in the early morning, if you get yourself out there in the garden, it looks fabulous with the low light going across all of these things. This is Sesleria autumnalis. This is one of the landscapers' real favourite grasses to use because it makes a neat, tidy clump. It's easy to look after because it's one of those ones which you put in, grows steadily, you have good grass base here, flower head above, and it just looks tidy most of the time. It is a grass that you can put near the front because it's not solid here. So what you are thinking about is that its foliage only gets to probably about a foot or 30 centimetres, but then its flower heads or seed heads come up to about 45 centimetres or 18 inches, and you can see through them. So it becomes one of those transparent plants where you are able to put maybe something lower behind, but if it's a solid colour like a Hylotelephium or something like that, you don't miss it. So think about it as something that you can put nearer the front like so. This will grow in sun or part shade, so it can go on the edge, which is probably, if you've got trees behind, this is the bit that's going to get sunnier, probably going to get a little bit drier as well. Moving on to a grass that actually flowers in the spring and early summer, this is Luzula nivea. Now this is completely different. This is going to make a really strong, thick clump of foliage at the base, and by that I mean it's going to come up with its foliage to somewhere around about 18 inches, 45 centimetres, and then above that you will get these wafts of white flower on the top. So this is a dead flower head, so you can see they are held right above the top of the hair, and they are white and they just go out in a fountain to the side. So this is something that you would need to put further back, and it does like the shade, but it likes to be slightly moister. So if we're considering this border and we're going it's drier here, let's think of this side as being slightly moister, or just adding in extra garden compost so that this plant will survive quite nicely. And that can go at the back there. Then when it has finished flowering, you can deadhead it and you are left with a beautiful grass shape, dark green lump. Maybe not the right word, but you know what I mean. It's going to be there as a contrast for other plants in front of it to show themselves off. So you utilise that height and that depth with it. Let's start thinking about the plants that we're going to fill in with this border, and the ones that are going to make it interesting and give you a bit of colour. This is what used to be Persicaria. This is Bistorta, amplexicaulis, Rosea. And this again is a plant that creates a good mound at the bottom and then has these lovely sprays of pink flowers at the top. Now the amplexicaulis, Rosea and Alba, the ones which are used for the breeding of all the newer varieties, are not as big and heavy with their foliage as some of the more modern ones. So you're not going to get this huge big amount of foliage. It's just going to go up to probably about 18 inches, 45 centimetres. But then they do make large clumps. So be aware of that. So when you're putting them in, give them space. So this is in a 3-litre container. It is going to make much more spread out to at least 2 feet, so 60 centimetres, but it will look fabulous put in somewhere behind this grass like so. So you're keeping that airiness, and you've got these lovely brown heads against this pink here, and that is going to go out in all sorts of directions. So I quite like the idea of having those and pushing those back. We may space it a bit more when we have finished, because this is to give you an idea of what they look like when it is planted and grown. When we finish off at the end of the video, I'll space them out and show you exactly how far they should be. Now we have a Molinia. This one is Moorhexe. Now this is one of those real wafting grasses, you know. It hasn't got a huge amount of body at the bottom here. It's got wonderful dark stems and then a more open, real grass-like head on the top of it. Now this wants a little bit more moisture as well, and it will take part shade. And again, not a lot of body here, so you can put it further forward, so you can have those dancing heads further forward in the border as well. Now this one I would say to go in front of perhaps the Luzula, maybe to the side, so that you can see the darkness of these stems. So if the Luzula was higher, you can see that those stems would really show up. But it also means that this is wafting in the breeze and looking really, really good. I will give you cultural tips as well on all of these plants once I have got them laid out. Another beautiful tall grass. Now I'm 5.5 feet, so this has gone over the top here, so you can see how tall this is going to get. It's another different Molinia. So Molinias come in all shapes and sizes, from quite short ones to really tall ones. I think they're elegant grasses. They are so beautiful. Now the heads on this are just open and you get that lovely grass-like top. The foliage is thicker on this one. This one is the one with the huge long name. It's Caerulea subspecies arundinacea x Hu. So, which is it's a fabulous name, but it is a really good grass. These stems are strong, so they stay up. The grass here is broader, it's a lime green, it makes a lovely clump. So this will go probably middle of the border and look really quite fine. So it will take sun to part shade. So all of these are going to be sun to part shade, which is great. So it means that you can have either overhanging trees which give them a bit of shade, or you can have them where they are in sun in the morning, shade in the afternoon, or vice versa, shade in the morning, sun in the afternoon. So it's really quite a good way of having a border. Also, that type of part shade border is sometimes easier to grow plants in because the moisture levels don't disappear as quickly as they do in a full sun border. At the moment, we would have, in the spring, not a lot of interest in this border. This border would be mainly leaf and base, probably just coming through. So you would want to be putting some bulbs in here as well to give you a little bit of interest for then. But you can also have some of the woodland type plants such as euphorbias, and this is Euphorbia mellifera. No, it isn't. This is Euphorbia schillingii, and this is a really lovely branching headed type with the beautiful emerald green flowers on the top here. Good leaf, and it holds its leaf right the way through into the autumn, and then as you get into the autumn, so its foliage turns a beautiful red colour and then it defoliates. So this would give you flower in that earlier month, and this can go into one of your shadier bits, and I think it would look quite good sort of tucked around here at the back, and then you would know that your border is starting to grow up with that shade. So that one is going to flower in the spring. It's going to look good and fill the space right the way through. Let's put a little bit more colour into this border now. And we've got some beautiful autumn flowering perennials. These are very old traditional type plants. This is Chelone, and this lovely pink heads here, often known as turtle head. and it is great. I don't know why it's not used as much anymore, because at this time of the year it's a completely different shape to any of the daisy plants that are around. So this is going to make a lovely clump. It gets quite thick. It will get up to a little bit taller than it is here, so probably up to somewhere between 2.5 and 3 feet. That's 60 to 75 centimetres, and it's going to make quite a large clump. And I think this would look, it will grow in any soil, by the way. It doesn't mind, because it's verging on being thuggy. It will tolerate anything, so that's always good when you're thinking about shady borders. Now I know it's not going to get giant height, but I think actually it would look quite good tucked right at the back here, and then that will give you some depth to the border and drawing your eye into that bit, because we're going through a lot of low stuff which actually have got height at the front here, and you want a bit of solidity at the back. So that I think works out quite well there, and it's going to spread and fill the space very, very nicely. One last grass that I wanted to go, and this one is a Carex. This one is Carex, and I can never pronounce it, muskingumensis. And anyone out there who knows better how to pronounce it, well done. So this is a really beautiful Carex. It's lime green. It starts off growing with these lovely straight up tufts like this, going straighter, and then they go on and up, and they can also fall over a little bit. And I don't mind that. I think that's actually very endearing in the plant, because it then means that it's filling up a spot, or if it goes and touches something else, then it is at a height whereby it's filling up a huge amount of space. And it's really grown for this fabulous fine foliage, and it just looks superb. Now again, sun to part shade, most soil types, and it's a happy bunny. So this one I would suggest that would go somewhere in the front like so, and then, you know, if it falls into its neighbour, that's absolutely no problem at all, because it's not doing any harm to its neighbour. And once you've finished and it all collapses down, you can give it a trim back, so it's not a problem at all. Now we're going to finish off with a couple of plants which are going to fill up the rest of the space, and we'll start off with this one, which is Persicaria, and this has remained Persicaria, and look at it, isn't it structural? It's a fabulous thing. So this is filiformis, and it has these beautiful dark red chevrons on the leaves, or they're burgundy really, burgundy stems, and then the foliage stays at around about 2 feet, so you get a solidity, although you can still see through, of the foliage, and then you get the architectural wiry dark stems with these tiny little flowers. And what you see at the end here, this red, these are the flowers finished. The flowers are actually minute, and they're right at the top here, and they open just slightly white, then they finish and you get the red. So they look superb, and I think this is a plant that should be used much more. It's great in shady spots. So this is going to fill up a space really well, and you could either have it somewhere here at the back behind the Euphorbia, but in actual fact I think I'm going to move the Euphorbia and I'm going to move this Molinia, because I reckon this will look far, far better somewhere in front of what is that Luzula, and it's just going to look really great. So it creates a fabulous network and holds itself up, and you've got that see-through look. You just get that wiry bit going through, and you know, maybe the Molinia is in the wrong place now. Maybe I can switch it out and put it over here. No, that would be a little bit drier. We'll move the Molinia just a fraction further down the planting and move it to there, and then that works quite nicely. The last plant I've got is another Bistorta, and this one is the white form, and as you can see, it is beautiful. The head's just wiry going up, lovely white flowers there, not as heavy at the base. This is what I'm saying about these two. These are the species ones, the Rosea and the Alba, and they don't give you such heavy big foliage at the bottom as you get with some of the other forms. Now these used to be Persicaria, they're now in the Bistorta group, but that doesn't change how they grow. So you can see this is going to grow quite large. It's already trying to get itself out of this pot. So they're going to make a large thing. So this one we will put at the back because white shows up, it lightens stuff. So white and yellow if you need to lift things, always a good tip. So this one we would put into the back here, and I think that then fills up this border. And you've got the, I'm going to put the Molinia back in there. I'm not worried about that, it can sit in there. So from my point of view and perspective, this is now a lot of beautiful different heights and shapes. You've got a lot of foliage which is very, very similar because you've got the grass-like foliage, you've got the rounded leaves, and I think those contrast against each other really, really well, especially as when they're all growing together. You've got enough interest in here for spring through into the summer, into the autumn, and it will make a fantastic border for you. Now, all of the grasses that are here are ones, oh no, sorry, except for the Luzula, are ones that you would be able to give a haircut in the spring. You'd leave them all there until in the winter, leaving all of this up here. In the spring, when everything has gone brown, you pull out the worst foliage and then you give them a haircut back down. That's absolutely fine. They are all ones, apart from the Luzula again, that you would divide in the summer months because they are warm growing plants. So you divide them probably May, June time. That's their division time. The Luzula comes from seed. The Luzula also doesn't really like being cut back too much. So what you would do with that is you would pull out dead growth out of it, and then you can divide that one. So that one's perfectly okay. The Euphorbia you would be careful with because you know with Euphorbias they have the white sap, so don't get that on your hands. If you're dealing with them and cutting them back, always wear gloves. That particular variety you'd cut it back in the spring and up it comes again, looking really, really fantastic. You probably don't actually need to cut it back because its dead stems will have already collapsed off the plant anyway. The Persicarias and Chelone, autumn flowering, so you split them in the spring. Probably every 2 to 3 years for division on those varieties. And the Persicaria here, it was the Bistorta and the Chelones that you actually, I always get muddled up with their names. They get split. The Persicaria here, the filiformis, you can take from seed and it will seed around. You just hoe those seedlings out, no problem at all. So this is what it would look like if it was fully grown. But if you were planting it, you would space it just a fraction more. So you would have everything at a little bit further apart. Now, my normal rule of thumb for when you are placing plants is you hold them nicely in your hands like this and you have them at shoulder width apart. Once you do that, you just bend down and put them to the ground. That's when the plants are smaller and ones that don't grow so big. But if you've got them like this, still do it like this and just go apart like so, because these are going to fill up the space. So that is quite easy. These ones are going to make it to say 45 to 60 centimetres in width around each other. Therefore, the spacing between them needs to be 45 to 60 centimetres from the centre of each plant. So these could just be spaced out. Hopefully that gives you some ideas on something to do with grasses and just a few different herbaceous perennials, giving you a really stunning border. Thank you very much for watching and please do subscribe to the channel.